Phone Booth is a forgotten gem from the very early 2000s that bears a lot of the hallmarks of movies from that particular era, but you might be surprised to learn that the process of its creation spanned almost 4 decades and that at various stages of development it briefly involved what feels like every other big-name actor and director you've ever heard of. You're about to hear about all that, but first some context. This is part 7 of an 8-part series in which I recommend movies to people who enjoyed The Batman, which I didn't like, and then I did. There's no need to watch in order, but the previous movie on this list was Minority Report. 2 Colin Farrell movies from 2002, back to back. One, just a smidge more sophisticated than the other. That'll be important here in a minute. If you aren't familiar with the premise of Phone Booth, Stu Shepard, a sleazy, self-serving, small-time publicist in New York City, steps into the telephone booth at 53rd and 8th in Times Square to call Pam, a woman he's interested in, without leaving any trace on his cell phone for his wife Kelly to find. They talk, he hangs up, the phone then rings, and he answers. The caller is a man who seems to know everything about Stu, his life, and the people in it, including Kelly and Pam, and he compels Stu to stay on the line by threatening him. First his marriage, and then his life.
If you hang up, I will kill you.
Over the course of the next hour or so, Stu is called out on all his personal faults, essentially standing trial inside the phone booth, with the caller playing the role of judge and executioner and sharing jury duty with the crowd that gathers and grows as the situation outside the booth escalates. Writer Larry Cohen actually pitched the idea for a movie set entirely inside a phone booth, in real time, to acclaimed filmmaker Alfred Hitchcock, the quote-unquote master of suspense, back in the 60s. Neither could figure out a story reason for the protagonist to stay in the booth for the entire film, but neither ever forgot the idea. When Cohen finally came up with the sniper nearly 3 decades later, well after Hitchcock's death, and started feeling out how to get the movie made, it seemed like everyone in Hollywood wanted in. Tom Cruise, Steven Spielberg, Nicolas Cage, Mel Gibson, the Hughes brothers, Will Smith, Dustin Hoffman, Al Pacino, Robin Williams, Anthony Hopkins. Do you know how close we came to having Jim Carrey in the lead role? Seriously, Jim Carrey was cast as Stu. He talked about it publicly on Entertainment Tonight. He was fitted for the suit that Stu wears. But then, according to director Joel Schumacher, Carrey called him and said he wanted to drop the role. For whatever reason, he didn't feel comfortable with it. Wait a second, Jim Carrey? Joel Schumacher? One by one, big names were passed over or brought on board only to be removed later. My favorite of these stories is what happened when Michael Bay was considered to direct. When he met Cohen, who by this point had spent decades trying to figure out how to keep the entire story inside the phone booth in order to fulfill his promise to now departed legend Hitchcock, and who now sought to finally realize the concept they'd come up with together all those years ago, right around the time Bay was born. When he met Cohen, the first words out of Michael Bay's mouth were, "Okay, how do we get this thing out of the damn telephone booth?"
Because it's just not a perfect science. It's just...
In the end, Colin Farrell got the part of Stu, and the movie was shot chronologically in only 10 days, with the extras who had to be on set all throughout filming kept in the dark about how the story would unfold. These lucky people showed up each day of the shoot eager to see what would happen next. A once-in-a-lifetime experience, to be sure. Topped off when, on one of the last days of the shoot, Farrell delivered Stu's long, emotional monologue in one brilliant take.
I've never done anything for anybody who couldn't do something for me.
Fox waited to release Phone Booth for almost a full year to fully capitalize on Farrell's rising stardom, with 2002's Minority Report's success being the go signal they've been waiting for, catapulting Colin Farrell into being something like a household name. Phone Booth premiered in September of 2002 at the Toronto International Film Festival and was set to release in theaters on November 15th. A month and a half before that, on October 2nd, 2 criminals responsible for a series of shootings that had begun in February 2002 made their way to DC and Maryland. Over the next few weeks, these snipers would claim 10 more lives and injure 3 other people, adding to the list of horrific acts of violence they've been building throughout the year. And so Phone Booth was delayed again, understandably given the subject matter. It was finally released in theaters on April 4th, 2003, and it's hard to say how much the film's troubled development did or didn't impact its staying power in people's minds. Its reception after wide release can be summed up more or less as decent enough, and today you rarely hear it mentioned. Honestly, I suspect that this would have been the outcome no matter how things had played out. At the end of the day, the risky premise of Phone Booth is one that lends itself well to being summed up and dismissed in 1 or 2 incredibly reductive sentences. I've had multiple face-to-face interactions with people who said they thought it was boring because it takes place almost entirely inside of a phone booth.
I never said I had binoculars. I have a highly magnified telescopic image of you. Now, what kind of device has a telescopic sight mounted on it?
What, you mean
Like a rifle.
Yeah, that's all the movie is.
A 30 caliber bolt action 700 with a carbon 1 modification and a state-of-the-art hands-hold tactical scope. And it's staring straight at you.
Yeah, how's my fucking hair?
Just a guy standing in a phone booth.
Nice try, pal. Go to hell.
Now, doesn't that just torque your jaws? I love that. You know, like in the movies, just as the good guy is about to kill the bad guy, he cocks his gun. Now, why didn't he have it cocked? Because that sound is scary. It's cool, isn't it?
Just standing there talking.
Hang up the phone.
Get rid of him.
Hang up the fucking phone.
Look, we can work this out!
Get rid of him.
Hang up the fucking phone.
For the whole
I
movie.
got a cell phone, and I got cigarettes. I got no fucking weapon.
Then what are you doing in a phone booth making calls?
You wanna see it? Here.
Hey! Hey! Don't reach for that! Hold your fire!
Jesus.
I don't need to see it. I already know what's there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's alright. Thinking and then talking isn't for everyone.
I'd take off if I was you. He gon' kick your ass. Hey, that
He gon' kick your ass. He gon' kick your ass.
You get the fuck out of here. Will you go away?
Phone Booth is a movie I unapologetically love. Gimmick or not, it's damn fun to watch. Every white-knuckled second of it bleeds this pristine, paradoxical blend of terrified hopelessness and, well, hope. A pitiful, desperate sort of hope. It's tense but also darkly humorous, and the jokes do land.
Verify this information for me. Guy in the booth shot that guy over there and stuck around to make a phone call. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what the hookers are saying.
All right, give me the horn.
They're woven in so seamlessly that they add to the tone without disrupting it, which isn't always what happens when you mix funny with serious. As great as Colin Farrell is in Minority Report, he's better here. He's on fire in this movie. For how sleazy his character Stu Shepard is, Farrell makes him profoundly sympathetic. I actually get teary-eyed every time I watch his monologue near the end. Kiefer Sutherland plays the caller, capital C, the man Stu's talking to on the phone, a man he can't hang up on. Considering how he phoned in his entire performance, he did an incredible job. Seriously, it's easy to forget that all he is a voice on the other end of the line. It's his entire presence throughout most of the story. The charisma and menace he brings to the character is astounding.
Would you really miss Kelly if she was gone?
That's it. Not another word. I'm not talking to you.
Your choices put other people in jeopardy, Stuart. When are you going to learn that?
Turns out the caller wasn't originally played by Sutherland.
Enough of this sideshow, Stu. Your sins have finally caught up to you.
So this is all some religious thing.
Ah, that would explain it. Bible-crazed killer picks on fashion-obsessed PR guy.
The phone in the booth they recorded Farrell in actually worked, and during filming, Farrell used it to talk to actor Ron Eldard, the original caller. The two of them presumably played off each other's performances, and then, at Cohen's request, Sutherland's voice was recorded and added in later during post-production. It's impressive then that all of Sutherland's lines sound like direct responses to something he heard in real time. It just sounds like they're talking.
I think they're on the side of vets.
You are pathetic, Stu. Why don't you wake up? Napalm charred bodies? I'd have to be 50 to be in that war.
Stop fucking with my head, please!
This sort of thing is easy to take for granted when it's done right, but stands out like a sore thumb if the filmmakers get it wrong. Suffice it to say, they nailed it.
That's phenomenal, Stu. You're doing so much better than the others.
Logistical stuff aside, Sutherland just kills it in this movie. His voice and diction are intimidating and chilling. He's also funny as hell when he wants to be. He's got great comedic timing.
Look, I don't know. They're busy.
Busy.
Answer the phone.
Fucking coward.
Hi, Stu.
Forrest Whitaker plays Police Captain Ramey, who tries to de-escalate the situation while struggling to comprehend it. The way Whitaker plays this character is very smart, because a lesser actor might have come off as bland at first, and then in some of the later scenes probably just bad. But Whitaker's acting makes it clear that his character is also acting. He's being friendlier, cheesier to Stu than he likely ever is with anyone else under normal circumstances, and using slower, broader movements than he otherwise would so as not to spook the man he believes just shot someone. This is the really great thing about Ramey as a character. He's a genuinely good-natured guy, but he's also extremely shrewd. While trying to talk down a man who doesn't need talking down, a man in a position he can't possibly understand, some of the things he says are cringeworthy, and he's sort of the butt of the joke even though he's doing the best he can with the information he has.
You got some bad news on that call, right? Made you want to jump off the edge.
I've been falling ever since.
I'm gonna push him over the edge. Just say the word.
It's time to land, man.
When you hit bottom, you die.
I'm your safety net.
Oh, please say the word.
But after a certain point, when you know that he's catching on to the nature of Stu's situation but you aren't sure to what extent, the secondhand embarrassment fades, and these goofy lines become more intriguing because it's clear that he's trying to cleverly communicate something else to Stu through them.
I'm not gonna let that happen here.
My favorite thing to do with any story is draw connections between important ideas and themes and get a feel for what statement is being made. Minority Report was a fascinating goldmine of substance, an iceberg of hidden depth. But that's not really the case here. Everything there is to Phone Booth is pretty much all right there on the surface, and that's probably actually more appropriate here. It's got a very worthwhile message about communication and self-presentation, both verbal and non-verbal.
You'd think she didn't know she was being watched, but beautiful women always know. That false indifference, superior air, it's just a tease. They want eyes on them. Why does she put on her makeup, do her hair, dress so nicely? Not for her husband that she hardly ever sees. No, it's for somebody else to notice. I notice.
What are you doing? You stay away from her. Leave her alone.
I'm giving her what she wants.
Some of the characters are depicted trying to mislead and manipulate through implication and in the way they carry themselves, whereas others, and really the film itself, are straightforward and honest about what they're about. In this way, I think the earnestness of the movie is one of its greatest strengths. There are people who compare the phone booth to a confessional and the caller to a priest, but in the film's commentary track, director Joel Schumacher states outright that that was never his intention, that he just wanted to make a movie that would give viewers a very different sort of experience. Phone Booth, to me, showcases the best execution of that hyperactive freak-out camera play common to movies from the late 90s and early 2000s like Enemy of the State and Man on Fire. It's toned down a lot, reserved mostly for a few important climactic scenes, and it fits the tone and style of Phone Booth well. Additionally, the use of split screen works to show us what's going on outside the booth while keeping the focus on Stu so that viewers stay immersed in the real-time feel of the situation. And at just 81 minutes long, the pacing is perfect. All of this lends the film a unique, exhilarating energy that makes it a blast to watch and rewatch. Everyone who worked on it knew what they were doing, and the results speak for themselves. If I have one criticism, it's that the first words the caller speaks to Stu, which are repeated at the very end of the movie, don't seem to really mean much of anything.
Isn't it funny? You hear a phone ring and it could be anybody. But a ringing phone has to be answered, doesn't it?
What?
Yeah, exactly. What? I struggle to come up with a purpose for these particular lines other than they sound cool, I guess.
It's cool, isn't it?
Honestly, it feels like they're meant to signal that the movie's about something deeper, that it's more substantial than it appears, but the implied thematic connection is intentionally vague and tenuous enough that viewers who care are left to try to work out for themselves some meaning when there never actually was one. I don't want to think that that's all these lines are for, especially when that sort of empty posturing is what the movie is ultimately criticizing, but what else is there? Am I missing something? They really push phones on us at the start of the movie.
What I'm trying to show here is how many people you see every day with a phone glued to their ear, whether it be a pay phone or one of their cell phones, or certainly when you go into offices, people are sometimes on several phones at once.
I just don't know what the purpose is other than, look, phones, because the movie is Phone Booth.
There are almost 10 million telephone exchange lines, over 50 phone services. 3 million New Yorkers are cell phone users.
By sharing all the cell phone statistics and then telling us how few payphone booths are left in the city, is the film trying to emphasize how incredibly unlikely it was for this whole ordeal to happen to Stu of all people, as if he was targeted by karma? Maybe a warning about how this sort of vapid lifestyle will eventually catch up to you? I genuinely don't think that's it, but then what is it? This might be a first for my channel. I want to know what you, the viewer, think. Let me know in the comments. Seriously. I usually don't ask for internet strangers' opinions because I frankly don't care that much, but this time I really am curious. I'm interested in reading what you have to say about the meaning of the movie. Am I underselling it? I love Phone Booth, so I definitely don't want to do that. Let me know. All that aside, Phone Booth is just the best. It's such great fun. Watch it, or rewatch it. I'll leave you with that. The next video in this series will be the last one.
Hello? Who am I speaking with?